Have you ever felt utterly alone, lost in the wilderness where every shadow hides a secret and every whisper chills your soul? Imagine waking up to silence so deep it suffocates, trapped in a forest that doesn't want you to leave. A nightmare where footsteps haunt the roof and unseen eyes watch your every move. Tonight, I'm taking you into the darkest, most terrifying true story of being alone in the woods, where survival becomes a desperate fight against something far worse than nature itself. Before we dive in, make sure to follow and support this channel for more chilling tales that will grip you until the very last second. Now let's step into the shadows together. I used to think I knew what it meant to be alone. I work from home, live alone, eat alone. Silence doesn't bother me. In fact, I crave it. That's why I booked the cabin. A little 2-day reset out in the deep woods of northern Washington. No emails, no texts, no one around, just me and the trees. The listing said it was off-grid but had solar for lights and a wood stove for heat. The kind of place with no address, just GPS coordinates, and a note that said 4 miles off the main road, dirt path. Keep going until you see the yellow ribbon on the tree. That should have been a red flag, but I didn't care. I wanted out. I left Seattle around noon on a Friday and drove for nearly 5 hours, most of it on winding back roads. By the time I reached the dirt path, my phone had already lost signal. I followed it slowly, tires crunching gravel, the trees growing thicker until the light barely reached the ground. Finally, I saw the yellow ribbon. The cabin looked exactly like the pictures. A simple wooden box tucked into the tree line. One small window, a porch with a single chair, and silence so thick it felt like snow. I stepped inside. Rustic, but clean. One bed, tiny kitchen, wood stove, a few shelves with mismatched dishes, no mirrors. I noticed that right away. The only reflection was in the window, and that would be gone when night fell. I unpacked, ate something cold, no microwave, no fridge, just a cooler with melting ice. I sat outside for a while as the sun disappeared behind the trees. There were no stars that night, just clouds and the distant sound of something moving through the leaves. At first I thought it was wind, but the trees weren't swaying. Then I thought maybe it was a deer or a raccoon, harmless. But it was the rhythm that got me. Not rustling, not scurrying. It sounded like steps, slow, deliberate steps. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. I stood on the porch, flashlight in hand, aiming it into the dark. Nothing. Just woods, black and still. I told myself to calm down. It's normal to feel on edge when you're alone in a new place, especially in the woods. I went inside, locked the door, and sat on the bed. I didn't feel scared, not really. Just alert. Like something was waiting for me to relax. I remember lying back, listening. There it was again. A tap, light, then another. On the wall, near the front door. I sat up, heart starting to pick up speed. Then silence. I stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes, frozen, listening, until I finally got the nerve to check it out. When I opened the door, the forest was dead quiet. No breeze, no crickets, nothing. I stepped out slowly. My flashlight scanned the porch, the ground, the trees, no movement. I turned to go back inside, and that's when I saw it. A single wet footprint, just one, right inside the doorway. I stared at it for way too long. The floor around it was dry. My boots were dry. I hadn't tracked anything in, and yet there it was. Clear as day. Toes pointed inward. Someone, or something, had stepped into the cabin, and I never heard the door open. The footprint haunted me. I must have stared at it for 5 minutes trying to explain it away. Maybe I stepped in a puddle. Maybe the floor wasn't as dry as I thought, but I knew. I knew I hadn't gone near water. I hadn't even taken my boots off yet, and the print wasn't mine. It was barefoot. I wiped it up with a dish towel and tossed it into the sink. Then I double-checked the door. Locked. Deadbolt turned. I even dragged the old wooden chair in front of it, just in case. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Every sound outside made my muscles tighten. Every creak in the wood felt louder than it should have. I left the flashlight on beside me, thumb resting on it like a trigger. But nothing happened. By morning, It felt like maybe I'd imagined it all. The light streaming through the window was soft, and the woods looked peaceful again. I told myself I was just being paranoid. The mind plays tricks on you when you're alone. I had wanted silence. Well, I got it. That afternoon, I decided to go for a walk. I brought my backpack, flashlight, and a bottle of water. There was a trail behind the cabin that looped around and was supposed to reconnect further down the ridge. The fresh air helped. Birds chirped. I even started to relax again. Until I saw the footprints. About 20 minutes in, just off the trail, the soil was softer, like it had rained there more recently. That's where I saw them. A set of boot prints. Not hiking boots like mine, but something heavier. The kind of thick sole you'd expect from work boots. The thing is, they weren't headed in one direction. They circled a single tree, over and over, 4 times, then stopped. No trail leading away, no scuff marks, just stopped. I stood there staring at them, feeling that cold grip of unease crawl up my neck again. I didn't even realize how quiet the forest had gotten. No birds now, no wind, just the faint sound of something breathing. I turned fast, scanning the trees. That's when I saw it. Someone was standing just beyond the tree line, maybe 30 feet away, barely visible between the trunks. No movement, no sound, just standing there. I couldn't see a face. The figure was too still, too dark, like it was part of the forest but didn't belong there. My hand went straight to the flashlight in my bag, though it was still broad daylight. I called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. I squinted, took one step forward, blinked, gone, just like that. No movement, no noise, no retreating footsteps. The space was empty, like nothing had been there at all. But something had been watching me. I could feel it, like eyes pressed against my skin. I turned around and walked fast. Didn't run. Not yet. I didn't want to look panicked, even though every nerve in my body was screaming at me to get back to the cabin. When I finally reached the clearing, I stopped short. Something was off. The front door. I was sure I had closed it. Now it was open. Not wide, just slightly ajar. Like someone had pushed it enough to make a point. The cabin was supposed to be mine, just for the weekend. But I wasn't alone anymore. I stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the cabin. The door was open. Not blown by the wind, not loose on its hinges, just barely open. Like someone had placed it that way. A message. I scanned the woods behind me, eyes darting between the trees. Nothing moved, no sound. Just the same suffocating stillness I had felt out on the trail. I gripped the flashlight in my hand, stepped slowly onto the porch, and pushed the door open the rest of the way. The room smelled off. Not rotten, not foul, just different. Like the air inside had been disturbed, touched by something that didn't belong. I looked around. My bag was still on the table where I left it. My sleeping bag still laid out on the bed. The lantern on the counter was right where I'd set it, but the zipper on my backpack was open. I hadn't left it that way. I moved closer and saw what was missing. My flashlight batteries. Gone. My phone. Still there. Dead, of course. But the portable charger I had packed with it, also gone. My stomach turned. Someone had been inside. They hadn't trashed the place. They hadn't taken anything valuable. Just the things I needed to see, to communicate, to leave in the dark. I backed up, heart pounding, and went to check the back window. It was still locked. So were the others. No sign of forced entry, which meant they came through the front while I was out, and they left the door open so I would know. That night, I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't light the stove or use the lantern. I sat in silence, hidden by the dark, a knife from the kitchen clenched in my hand. I watched the window for hours. It was almost midnight when I heard the first knock. Not a tap, not a scratch, a knock. From the back wall of the cabin, just once, then another knock. From the side, then from the front, then silence. I stayed frozen, barely breathing. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then I saw it. A shadow moved across the window. Just a flicker. Gone before I could fully register it. I wanted to believe it was an animal, a branch, anything else, but I knew better. This wasn't random. It was coordinated, intentional. There was more than one, and they were trying to scare me. It was working. I didn't sleep. When the sun rose, I walked out of the cabin with one goal: find help, even if I had to walk all the way back to the road. But as I stepped off the porch, something caught my eye. Something small. Right at the edge of the steps, a pile of batteries, my flashlight batteries, just sitting there, arranged in a neat little circle, like a gift or a warning. The pile of batteries looked clean, unused, each one placed perfectly, as if someone had spent time arranging them for effect. There was no mistaking it now. Whoever was out there wanted me to know they were watching, that they had been inside, that they could get close anytime they wanted. I pocketed the batteries, checked my knife again, and started walking back toward the dirt road I had come in on. I told myself I could make it out. 4 miles wasn't that far if I kept moving. But 20 minutes in, something strange happened. The trail didn't look right. The trees felt off, like I had circled back without realizing. I pulled out my paper map, double-checked the compass in my watch, and kept going. Another 20 minutes passed. I was back at the cabin. I stared at it, breath caught in my throat. I hadn't turned. I hadn't looped around. I had walked straight. And still, I had come right back. Something was wrong with the woods. I needed higher ground, a better view. Maybe then I could spot the road or another cabin. Anything. I climbed the ridge behind the cabin. The trail thinned fast, overgrown and narrow, but I kept pushing through the underbrush until I came to a clearing. At first I thought it was just another patch of forest. Then I saw the camp. Not mine. The tent was small, old, dirty, covered in mud and pine needles, like it had been there a while. Beside it, a dead fire pit, charred logs still half burned, a tin can hanging from a tree branch by a bit of frayed rope. I crouched low, listening. No movement, no voices. I took a step closer. There was something else near the tent. A large wooden crate, and next to it, scattered in the dirt, were items I recognized. My old grocery bag, a wrapper from the sandwich I had eaten on the drive up, a pair of batteries, like the ones left on my porch. They had been through my trash, my supplies. They'd been watching since I arrived. I moved closer to the tent, every instinct screaming at me to leave. But I needed to see who this was. I needed answers. The tent's zipper was halfway open. I knelt, pushed the flap aside, and looked inside. Empty. But the sleeping bag inside was still warm. Whoever was staying there had left recently. I backed away fast, heart hammering in my chest. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw it. A trail of fresh footprints. Deep. Leading away from the camp. Back toward the cabin. Whoever they weren't watching me anymore. They were waiting for me to come back. I ran. Branches clawed at my jacket as I pushed downhill, slipping once on loose dirt and catching myself just in time to avoid a fall. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until I saw the roof of the cabin through the trees. It looked quiet. Still. But now I knew better. I crept to the edge of the clearing, crouching low behind a tree, eyes scanning the porch, the windows. Nothing moved. No shadows. No signs of life. But that only made it worse. I approached slowly, one step at a time. The front door was still closed right where I'd left it. But something felt off. A smell, faint, like wet dirt and sweat. It was strongest near the side of the porch. That's when I heard it. A creak beneath me. Not the usual groan of old wood. It came from underneath. I dropped to my knees and leaned over the edge of the porch, lifting the loose slat I had noticed my first day there. It had looked like nothing, just a warped plank. Now I realized it was more than that. I pulled it up slowly. Dust rose, swirling in the sunlight. And then I saw it, a small space beneath the cabin, just a few feet high. Dry earth, old leaves, and in the far corner, a thin foam pad, like the kind used for camping, a stained blanket, an empty bottle of water. Someone had been sleeping under my cabin. I stared in horror, too stunned to move. The blanket wasn't old. The bottle still had condensation. They'd been there recently. Then I heard it. A breath. Not mine. Not close. Underneath. I dropped the plank and stumbled backward, heart nearly exploding in my chest. I backed up into the cabin, slammed the door, and threw the chair against it again, hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have a signal. My phone was useless. The charger was still missing. I couldn't risk staying another night. I had to leave, even if it meant walking in circles through the woods. But first I needed to see if they were still under there. I grabbed the flashlight, loaded the batteries they'd returned, and opened the back window quietly. I stepped outside and crept along the side of the cabin, avoiding the porch. I got down on my stomach, aimed the flashlight at the crawl space, and turned it on. The beam lit up the pad, the blanket, the empty bottle, and a set of eyes staring back at me from the shadows, unblinking, too wide, too close. I scrambled back, heart in my throat, and slipped in the wet grass, hitting the ground hard. The flashlight rolled away. By the time I scrambled up and aimed it again, the crawl space was empty. But those eyes, they weren't normal. There had been something wrong with them. Too round, too glassy, like they hadn't blinked in a long, long time. I didn't try to run anymore. Whoever or whatever was out there had already made it clear I couldn't escape. Every trail curved back. Every attempt to find the road led me in circles. The woods were playing tricks on me. Or worse, someone knew how to move through them better than I ever could. By the time dust settled, I had barricaded every door and window with whatever I could drag into place. Chairs, the small dresser, a log I had to roll in from outside. I was running on nothing but adrenaline and instant coffee. My knife stayed clutched in my right hand like it was part of my arm now. The sun dipped low, then disappeared. The dark came faster out here, and then the forest did something I hadn't expected. It went completely silent. No wind, no crickets, no distant owls. Not even the usual rustling of squirrels or birds in the underbrush. Just dead silence. And it stayed that way. I stood by the window, peeking out through a tiny gap in the curtain. The trees were pitch black outlines, unmoving. The whole world felt paused. I didn't even hear my own breath anymore. Then came the sound, a whisper too close to the glass. I jumped back, heart hammering, staring at the window. It hadn't broken. Nothing had moved. But I was sure of it now. Someone had whispered from inches away, on the other side of the pane. I waited, holding my breath. Then a different sound, a soft knock. Not on the front door, not on the back, but from the roof. 3 gentle knocks, slow, purposeful. I backed toward the center of the room, eyes scanning the ceiling. I didn't have an attic. There was nothing up there but wood and shingles. Then came the footsteps, heavy ones, moving across the roof. Not a raccoon, not a bird. These were long, deliberate strides, like someone was pacing above me. Then they stopped, directly over the center of the cabin. I waited, paralyzed, eyes locked upward. The ceiling creaked, then nothing. Minutes passed. Then I saw the light, a soft glow, orange and low, flickering in the distance through the trees. It looked like a small fire, too far to feel the heat, but close enough to see through the gaps in the forest. Someone had lit a campfire. Someone was waiting. I didn't want to go out there, but the fire was the first human thing I'd seen in over 48 hours. If it really was a person, maybe they had a radio, a truck, a way out. I couldn't take another night like this. I needed to know. I took the flashlight, the knife, and opened the back door. The air was colder now. I stepped into the trees. The fire flickered gently through the branches, maybe 200 yards out, and just as I started toward it, it disappeared, snuffed out, like it had never been there at all. The moment the fire vanished, the woods seemed to close in around me. Not physically, but something about the darkness shifted. The trees looked tighter, the path behind me already swallowed by shadow. I couldn't hear my own footsteps, not the crunch of leaves, not the sound of my breath. I turned off the flashlight. I don't even know why. Maybe to hide. Maybe because part of me knew the light would give me away. But in that pitch black, I felt blind, exposed, vulnerable. I moved slow, knife gripped tight, my other hand feeling through the air like it could catch what was coming. And then I saw him, a shape, standing between two trees ahead, just barely visible in the starlight. At first I thought it was another tree. But trees don't sway gently. Trees don't tilt their heads. Trees don't watch you. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He was tall, taller than any man I'd seen in person, and thin like he'd been stretched. His arms hung too low, fingers almost touching his knees. His clothes looked torn, but I couldn't see a face. Only a pale blur where it should have been. I took one step back. He didn't follow. He didn't breathe. I realized that after a few seconds of watching. No rise of the chest, no puff of steam in the cold air. Just stillness. Total, unnatural stillness. I turned and started walking backward, never taking my eyes off him. He stayed exactly where he was, watching until I blinked. He was gone. I stopped, heart racing, eyes scanning every tree, every shadow, but he wasn't there. I turned around. He was standing behind me, closer now. No sound, no footsteps, just there, like he'd always been there. I ran, full sprint, through thorns, past branches that scratched at my face and arms. I didn't look back, not once. The forest didn't make a sound. I ran until I saw the cabin again. I burst through the door, slammed it shut, and collapsed on the floor. I waited. Minutes passed. No knocks, no breathing, no creaking roof. Just silence. Then I noticed something new. There was a piece of paper on the floor, a scrap torn from my own notebook, the one I'd left zipped in my pack. There were 5 words on it, written in my handwriting. Stop running. Let it in. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, knees pulled to my chest, watching the shadows move across the walls. But nothing came. No footsteps on the roof, no knocks, no whisper from the window, just that note. Stop running. Let it in. At some point, my body gave out. I must have passed out on the floor for a while, because when I opened my eyes again, the sun had risen. Dim light crept through the curtains, painting the wood floor in pale stripes. And that's when I saw the scuff mark. It was faint near the base of the stove. A wide drag mark, like something had been pushed out of the way and then returned. I stared at it, numb, heart sinking. I stood slowly, walked over to the stove, and crouched. The whole unit looked like it had been moved. Not far, just a few inches, just enough. I gripped the sides and pulled. The stove slid, with effort, revealing a square outline in the floor beneath it. A trapdoor, covered in dust and old grime, with a rusted iron handle. I hesitated, then I opened it. The smell hit me first. Old earth, mildew, something worse underneath. The kind of smell that sinks into your clothes, into your skin. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it down. Wooden steps led into a cramped tunnel. Dirt walls, support beams soaked with time and rot. And something else. Shoe prints. A dozen different treads, some deep, some shallow, all leading down. I lowered myself in. The temperature dropped with each step. My breath steamed in the beam of the flashlight. The tunnel curved gently to the right, and I followed it until the walls widened into a small underground room. That's when I saw the photos. They were pinned to the dirt wall, rows of them. Polaroids, dozens, maybe more. I stepped closer. They were pictures of me. At the grocery store, at the gas station, filling up my tank, walking into my apartment 2 states away, sitting in my truck at a red light. Some were blurry, some taken at night. One was of me unlocking the cabin door on the first day. They'd been following me for a long time. I turned, stomach churning, and saw a wooden box in the corner of the room. Inside were scraps of clothing, strands of hair, a used fork I recognized from my kitchen. There was even an envelope filled with more of my handwriting, pages torn from journals I thought I'd lost years ago. I backed away, ready to bolt. That's when the light died. The flashlight flickered once, then went out. Dark, absolute dark. Then I heard the sound, breathing, slow, rasping, right next to me. I didn't wait to find out whose it was. I turned and ran back up the tunnel, banging my shoulder on the wall, scrambling up the steps 2 at a time. I threw the trap door shut, slid the stove back over it with everything I had, and fell to the ground shaking. The breathing had followed me up. It hadn't stopped. It was just on the other side of the stove, and it was still there when the sun went down again. That night was the longest of my life. I sat in the corner, knife gripped so tight my hands started to go numb. The breathing on the other side of the stove came and went, rising and falling, like whatever was down there didn't need sleep. Just waited, patient, hungry. I didn't eat, didn't dare turn on the light. I just listened. Every creak, every slow footstep shifting beneath the floor. By morning it stopped, gone, like it had never been there. The moment sunlight touched the window frame, I grabbed my things and ran out the door. I didn't care where the road was anymore. I just needed to be away. From the cabin, the trees, the tunnels, all of it. I ran for nearly 2 hours until my legs couldn't take it anymore. Then I found the path, the real one, with old tire marks, boot prints, signs of other people. I could have cried. I followed it without thinking, letting it pull me forward until the trees thinned out, and I saw the shimmer of pavement through the brush, the road. And then I saw the truck, an old forestry vehicle, parked crooked on the shoulder. I waved both arms, yelling, stumbling toward it like I'd been lost for weeks. The driver stepped out, a man in his 60s, beard down to his collar, sun-worn hat. "You lost?" he asked, calm. I nodded. "I've been at a cabin, about 5 miles that way. Someone's been following me, watching me. There's something underground." He raised a hand, cutting me off. "You're not the first." I froze. "What?" He looked at me, face unreadable. "You're not the first one to come out of those woods saying things like that. Cabin you were at? Single chimney? Old cast iron stove?" I nodded, too shocked to speak. His expression darkened. "You should have never gone out there alone." My throat went dry. "Why is it even there? That place should be condemned. There's something down in the tunnel." "There's always been something," he said, voice low. "They built that cabin on bad land, the kind that doesn't forget people, doesn't forgive them either." He gestured for me to get in the truck. I hesitated, then climbed into the passenger seat, shaking. He started the engine, rolled down the road, slow, tires crunching gravel. "Don't worry," and he said, "you'll forget most of it soon enough. They all do." I turned to him. "Forget? What do you mean?" He didn't answer, just stared ahead. We drove in silence for about 10 minutes before I noticed something odd. The trees. They looked familiar. Too familiar. And then I saw it. The mailbox. That same crooked mailbox with the half-rusted flag. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." We rounded the bend, and the cabin came into view. Same broken porch, same door, same forest. He'd brought me back. I turned to him, panicked. Why did you bring me back here?" His eyes didn't blink. "You never left." Then he was gone. The driver's seat was empty, the truck still rolling slowly, tires coasting until it stopped just outside the porch. I was alone again, and the front door of the cabin was open, waiting. I stood frozen outside the cabin, heart pounding so loud I thought it would burst through my chest. The door was wide open. No wind, no sound. Just that heavy, still air that pressed against my skin like a weight. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Slowly I stepped inside. The floorboards creaked underfoot, the same familiar smell of dust and damp wood filling the air. Everything looked exactly like I'd left it. The chair still knocked over, the stove back in place, the curtains hanging limp. Then I saw it, a figure sitting in the corner, hunched over. At first I thought it was just a shadow, but then it moved, slowly turning its head toward me. The face was pale and hollow, eyes black pits with no light inside. It whispered my name, not loud, barely a breath. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. It rose and stepped closer, dragging feet that made no sound. I stumbled back, tripping over the chair. The figure stopped just inches from me, its mouth opened wide, far too wide, and a cold, wet breath washed over my face. Then I woke up. I was lying on the dirt path outside the cabin, sunlight warming my skin. No figure, no cabin, no truck, just empty woods. I got to my feet, hands shaking. I don't remember how I got here. I don't remember walking out. But I knew one thing for certain. The woods never really let me go, and they never will.